Good evening. From Cairo to Beirut, partnership meets resilience. Egypt and Lebanon renewed their historic ties through economic, transport, and education agreements, a signal of unity amid regional instability and foreign provocation. But as Washington calls Lebanon a failed state and Israeli strikes intensify, Cairo's message is clear: Arab solidarity and sovereignty must prevail. And beyond the region, another kind of war rages, one of the tariffs, rare earth, and strategic leverage between the United States and China. I'm Mona Musalhi, and this is In Focus. Cairo and Beirut have sealed a new chapter in their bilateral relations through wide-ranging agreements across economic planning, transport, customs, education and aviation. The 10th session of the Egyptian-Lebanese Joint Higher Committee, co-chaired by Prime Ministers Mustafa Madbouli and Nawaf Salam, marks a deepening of strategic cooperation. Egypt reaffirmed its support for Lebanon's sovereignty and condemned continuing Israeli violations in the south, calling for full implementation of UN Security Council Resolution 1701. Yet, while Arab unity gains strength, Washington's rhetoric strikes a different tone. The US envoy for Syria labeled Lebanon a failed state. We're joined from Beirut to unpack these dynamics by Mr. Tariq Tarshishi, Managing Editor of Al Jumhuriya newspaper. Mr. Tarshishi, good evening to you and welcome to Qnews and to In Focus. Let me here start by asking Egypt and Lebanon. They have just conducted or concluded a major round of cooperation agreements. Now, how do you interpret this within the broader context of Lebanon's economic and political recovery? Mr. Tarshishi, do you hear me? Let me again repeat the question. Egypt and Lebanon have just concluded a major round of cooperation agreements. How do you interpret this step within the broader context of Lebanon's economic and political recovery? Mr. Tarshishi? Can you hear me? Okay, let me hear again repeat the question. Egypt and Lebanon here in Egypt or in Cairo have just concluded a major round of cooperation agreements. Now, how is that being interpreted within the broader context of Lebanon's economic and political recovery? Right, we're back and it seems like we lost contact, so we are joined by Mr. Zakaria Hamoudan, who is a political analyst. Mr. Hamoudan, good evening to you and welcome to In Focus. And let me start by asking, Egypt and Lebanon have just concluded a major round of cooperation agreement. Now, how do you interpret this step within the broader context of Lebanon's economic and political recovery?
First of all, Lebanon is going through an international openness phase, and I think that any kind of international cooperation will contribute positively, especially following the phase of war and starting reconstruction and also following the economic crisis that took place in Lebanon. So any openness from Lebanon will be a positive turn for the entire country.
If I may ask you here now, observers say that Egypt is positioning itself as an anchor of Arab unity. Do you see this partnership as part of a coordinated regional vision led by Cairo?
In fact, this is a very important question because recently we have touched upon the Egyptian important role at the Arab level, whether with the Gaza agreement. In addition, also to I'm not revealing any new information, but there has been circulated information that Egypt played an essential role in Lebanon with the visit of the head of the Egyptian intelligence to Lebanon. And according to my information, there has been an in-depth talk about when the head of intelligence met with the president, with the Lebanese president. I think this is a great role played by Egypt, and it has always been like this to reinforce the stability in the Arab region. I think it is very prominent to reinforce the stability. I do not want to talk a lot about the unity. I think there is an issue in this regard, but Egypt has always played a role to establish stability, especially in crises and following them. And also, there is a lot of efforts exerted by Egypt to connect the east with the west during a visit from Russia. There was a delegation, a Russian delegation, and the Egyptian, led by the president and his delegation, uh, leading Africa, the entire African continent, in this forum, in this very important forum. And we are aware of the importance of the Russian Arab Forum for the Russian Federation.
Yes. The agreements include economic planning, customs, and maritime transport. Now, what immediate benefits could Lebanese businesses and exporters expect from such deals? Hamadan, are you still with us? Let me here ask you about the agreements that were signed today. Now, the agreements included economic planning, customs, and maritime transport. What immediate benefits do you think Lebanon could, the Lebanese businesses could have or could expect from those deals?
This is a very important question because recently we have seen the important Egyptian role at the Arab level, whether with the Gaza agreement. I'm not revealing new information, but there has been findings that Egypt has played an essential role in Lebanon with the visit of the head of the intelligence to Lebanon, and according to my information, there has been a talk at an international level, especially when the head of the intelligence meets with His Excellency the President. I think it's the natural course that through which the Egyptian state goes through
Mm.
to enhance the stability of the Arab region. And I think this is the basic role of Egypt. I do not want to talk about unity because I think there is a lot of issues in this regard, but Egypt, of course, works to enhance and reinforce the stability in the times of crises, and also Egypt plays an integral role to connect the East to the West. We can see what happened in the African Russian Forum, which witnessed the Egyptian role led by President Sisi, and the accompanying delegation led the African continent in this stage during the forum, and we are all aware of the importance of the Russian Arab Forum.
Right. If I may ask you here, Egypt's foreign minister reaffirmed support for Lebanon's sovereignty and demanded an end to Israeli violations. What do you have on that?
After the war and starting the reconstruction period following the economic crisis, I think that any steps taken by Lebanon to open to other states will be positive and will reflect positively to the country.
Right. Um, I don't know if you're hearing me well, Mr. Hamoudan. I was speaking about Egypt's support for Lebanon and for the Lebanese sovereignty, while on the other side, Washington's envoy and his description of Lebanon as a failed state. And how do your media interpret that?
The Gaza agreement or um, the played role in Lebanon. I'm not revealing new information, but there has been some information that I am unaware of that Egypt's playing a very appreciated role, led by the visit paid by the head of the Egyptian intelligence to Lebanon. And according to my information, there has been talks at an international level, especially when the head of the intelligence meets with the president. I think this is the natural role that Egypt has always been playing, and always for reinforcing stability in the Arab world. I think this is the most prominent aspect of it. I do not want to talk about the unity issue a lot. I am aware of the issues in this regard, but Egypt plays a role, of course, in reinforcing stability, especially in the time of crises. And also, there is the role Egypt plays in connecting the East to the West. There has been the Russian Arab Forum, which witnessed the Egyptian role led by President El Sisi and the accompanying delegation, leading the African continent in the phase during the forum, and we're all aware of the importance of the Arab Russian forum.
Yes. Yes, clear. We thank you so much, Mr. Zakaria Hamoudan, for your valuable insights from Beirut on the meaning of this renewed partnership and Lebanon's determination to safeguard its sovereignty. And definitely, as Cairo and Beirut strengthen their Mediterranean bridge, the world's two largest economies, Washington and Beijing, test each other's resolve in a battle for global influence and economic supremacy. After months of tariff threats and supply chain shocks, Donald Trump and Xi Jinping met in Seoul, pledging what they called a reset in trade relations. But behind the smiles, deep structural tensions remain. China's dominance over rare earth minerals, essential for everything from smartphones to electric vehicles, has given Beijing an economic lever that few nations can counter. These resources are now at the heart of a geopolitical contest that stretches far beyond tariffs. Meanwhile, Washington's policy of tariff diplomacy continues to unsettle markets and allies alike. The latest round of duties on Chinese goods has reignited concerns about inflation, supply disruption, and the long-term credibility of the global trading system, and has warned that what we are witnessing is not a trade dispute, but a battle over the future of global production networks, whether they will remain open and interconnected or fracture into rival spheres of influence led by Washington and Beijing. Now we're joined from Paris by Mr. Maher Nicholas Fazeli, Director General of the EU Asian Centre, to discuss who truly holds the upper hand. Mr. Fazeli, good evening to you, sir. And let me start by asking, analysts say China is winning the trade war through its dominance response to US pressure.
I'm delighted to join you today. I think, the title of the Foreign Policy magazine article you're referring to, which was, I think, published yesterday, and it's titled, Why China is Winning the Trade War. I think it's exaggerated, right? To be objective and fair and neutral. And I think, in communication studies and in political science, we have to look at the locutor. So what is the locutor? It's who's talking. Who's talking? So if the guy talking, is he from the left? Is he from the right? Etc. And the locutor here is clear. It is Foreign Policy magazine.
You mean here that it's an opinionated article?
This is very biased. It's very biased, but many people are biased when it comes to China and Trump. So what I'm coming at is, Foreign Policy magazine is extremely biased. They are not neutral, but they are not alone in that position. The majority of so-called experts in Washington, D.C., New York, Paris, Berlin are on the same wavelength as Foreign Policy magazine. To make a long story short, they hate both China and Trump. So because they dislike China and they hate Trump, when they discuss that issue, they cannot be neutral. Why are they not? And I'm going to finish on that note, because let's not waste time with analyzing too much who foreign policy is. But why are they not neutral? Because they represent the old order. And the old order, you could call it the neoliberal, right? The neoliberal free trade NATO order. And that neoliberal free trade NATO order, the symbols of that order are people like George Bush, George Bush, Dick Cheney, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, Emmanuel Macron. They are the old order, which is now being destroyed by China and Trump's America. And so they believe in free trade. They believe in open borders. They believe in blah, 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 free capitalism. And all that is collapsing, right?
What do you think? What do you think? What is kind of negotiations is Trump moving with if we're speaking about a new kind of negotiations or policy, what are we speaking about here? Because or what you're
Yes,
speaking about,
yes,
or this current
yes,
led by Bush, as you said, and Dick Cheney, and Obama and
exactly,
Hillary Clinton, and yes, please.
exactly. So why the title is wrong, those who say that China is winning the trade war and Trump is losing, I think they're idiots. And I think they're wrong. I think it's too early to judge because, to know truly who's winning and who's losing, we have to wait another 2 or 3 years at least. But one thing is sure, we don't know who's winning yet in that gigantic, new great game, the age of geoeconomics, right? That huge rivalry, industrial, economic, financial rivalry, pitting, the Chinese dragon against the American eagle. It's enormous, it's gigantic, it's across the board, across all sectors of the world, economy, and the universe. That will take 3, 4 years. But we already know who's losing. So who is losing? Europe. So clearly, the European Union, Germany, France, Holland, the EU is losing a lot. England or Britain is also losing a little bit. And many Asian and American countries are losing a lot. For example, Mexico and Canada, they are losing. In Asia, the only winners in Asia probably are Singapore, South Korea, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Abu Dhabi. Why? Because they are playing the Trump card. So Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, South Korea, Singapore, they're quote unquote following that Trump model to different extents, in different ways. They are embracing the new world. The new world is the age of geoeconomics. Europe, Canada, Britain.
Can you further illustrate on the geoeconomics and what does this say and what does this mean? Because people would not really understand this terminology because it's new, as you said. Can you
Yes.
please illustrate on that?
So what's happening now is a great illustration. So Trump attacked many, or attacked, he thought, and I think he was in part, he was partly right. In early April of this year, he declared a new trade war or a new trade arrangement. He said that, the old trade arrangement was hostile to America's interest. He wants to reindustrialize America. He wants to bring back factories away from Europe and Malaysia and Vietnam. He wants to transfer the factories to Pennsylvania, Oklahoma, Kentucky. And he's weaponizing. So weaponizing means that you are using finance and trade as a weapons, as an arm. And so he's weaponizing trade and finance. And he started in April of this year, 9 months ago. And by hitting hard many countries with tariffs. And most countries lost because they panicked and they made big concessions to Trump. And among the countries who panicked and made huge concessions, you have Canada, loser, UK, loser, France, Germany, Europe, losers. China is the only one who said, no, no, no. I'm not going to make any concession here. And they replied to Trump's trade tariff pressure by playing the rare earth minerals card. They told him very aggressively and bluntly, we controlled 60-70% of the world's output of rare earth minerals, but you know what? We controlled 95% of the world's output of refined, ready-to-use minerals. Now, do you want them for your factories in Pennsylvania, Oklahoma, Ohio? If so, stop your tariffs. If you don't, we will stop supplying American industries with rare earth minerals. That is geoeconomics. It's using balance of power, the brutal balance of power, to stabilize the world order.
Right. Now, if we speak now about smaller economies, and if we speak from the Gulf to the Southeast Asia, they are forming new trade blocs. Are we witnessing the birth of third pole in global commerce beyond the US and China? What do you see here?
Personally, I think no. So personally, what they call in the Arab world and Africa and parts of Asia and South America, a new non-aligned movement, عدم الانحياز الجديد. I don't think it will work. But one thing will work. You have between China and America big pivot nations, and you only have 8 or 9 strategic, important, big pivot nations, and they are in a good position because America cannot afford to antagonize them too much. Because if Trump pressures them too much, they can go to China, and so if Trump is not nice to them, they will play the China card. And what are these big pivot nations? Russia is one of them. South Korea is one of them. Israel is one of them. Egypt is also a pivot nation. Saudi Arabia is also a pivot nation. Brazil is a pivot nation. So what are pivot nations? They're quite large, and they are located in a very strategic geography. Egypt is a perfect example. It's a bridge between Africa, the Mediterranean, and the Middle East. It's large, it has a big population, etc. So it is a pivot nation. So in that new great game, pitting China against America, only pivot nations can, to a certain extent, tell Trump, no, please, Donald, don't pressure us, or else we'll move into China's camp. And that's exactly why Trump wants to end the Ukraine war. Because Trump is
if I may ask you here, you have mentioned some of the pivot countries. You mentioned Russia, you mentioned Egypt, you mentioned some of the countries. Now, some names of who you mentioned here are part of a bigger bloc that is called the BRICS.
Yes.
So we're speaking about China, Russia, Egypt, and many other countries who are in this bloc.
Yes.
What do you think? What do you think of that? Where will that bloc lead? Would that lead to a multipolar system, a multipolar geo-economics abilities? What do you think?
Yes. Yes, but it will take a lot of time. So public opinion in the Arab world, in the Muslim world, in North Africa, in Asia, they would like to believe that the BRICS are already something very advanced and mature. Likewise, in Venezuela, Brazil, Mexico, they would like to believe that the BRICS are an alternative, a third way, الطريق الثالث. But it will take time, a lot of time, right? And in reality, the power of the BRICS, the economic and financial power, is China. Let's be honest. Brazil, India,
Right.
Russia, they're nice, but the core power is China.
Right. So that remains to be seen. The world needs multipolar system and new geo-economic systems, not one system. We thank you so much, Mr. Maher Nicholas Fazeli, for your insights from Paris on the evolving landscape of global trade and the strategic calculus shaping the new economic order. And as Egypt and Lebanon renew their partnership and the world's powers battle for economic dominance, one message stands out: unity, resilience, and dialogue remain the only way forward. Many thanks for watching. In Focus, I'm Mona Mosalhi. See you next time.